Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. I'll call it to order. Mr. Thompson, if you would, the roll.
Clark Gruber.
Here.
Larry Heinig.
Here.
Todd Heinrich.
Here.
Michael Neese.
Here.
Amy Nichols.
Here.
Lygie Hanny. George Sleeper.
Here.
Janice Varney.
Here.
Tim Stegman.
Here. Next up, we'll have the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support. It's been moved and supported to approve the agenda. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next up, we'll have approval of the meeting minutes for the February 3rd, February 16th, 2022 meetings.
I'll move acceptance as presented for both.
I support.
It's been moved and supported to approve the February 3rd regular meeting and February 16th special meeting for 2022. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next up, public comment. Citizens in the audience may address the Planning Commission regarding any topic that is not on this evening's agenda. Is there anybody that wishes to speak? Please state your name, address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
The good old days.
You probably want to curl the mic in towards the middle a little bit.
Yeah, I will after I get my papers set here. All right, greetings. My name is Sarah McHugh. I live at 429 Superior Street. I know that recently there's been concerns about the short-term rental community. I only want to share my experience that my husband and I have had. So we lived in Kalamazoo for 15 years. We were there at the height of the Kalamazoo Promise. Home prices were at an all-time high. It was hard to find a house. Inventory was low. Property taxes were very high. People commuted 20 minutes in because they wanted to live in Texas Township, Vicksburg, Plainwell areas. When we left and built our home here in South Haven, spring of 2016, we were excited to join the community. We had kept our boat here for many years, and frankly, we were done with the hustle and bustle of the city and wanted to live a vacation lifestyle. We built a home that afforded us the opportunity to share it with others. It has also helped us pay for income when we were furloughed during our jobs as well, which was a godsend. We've paid down debt, and we've even been able to share it with family. I do wish to address why there are so many business licenses. It's simply because the personal license, which is 6 terms, up to 28 days, it's just not enough time. I know a lot of people that had a personal that did switch to a business. In our instance, it was not a fit. We rent our home April to October, and we average roughly 45 days of rent. The personal license, I understand, which I think is fair, was designed so that local community members could still rent their homes during those prime holiday times, which is great. But I do have a problem with the personal license. First off, the safety issue, I realize it's only 28 days, and they are inspected every other year. Businesses are inspected once a year. You're welcome to join in ours this year if you'd like to see how the process goes. Frankly, safety should not be based upon the designation of your license. It should be safe for the renters, period. In regards to the fee, which I do know is coming up for review with the City Council here soon, I have no issue with that, but I do want to address from the snapshot that was shared in January just recently. It showed an 88% decrease in revenue. Well, that was simply because we were going through a pandemic. Many people did not rent their homes. And if you look at the additional data accompanying that City Council report, it shows a significant loss in revenue, but it does not designate personal license versus business license, which I do think that needs to be shared. There is a concern about affordable housing and bringing young people to the community, the city website has census data that is from 2010. I was able to find some recent data that basically our demographics are this. The average person is roughly 57 years of age who has a bachelor's degree and more. They make a household income of $58,000, and 64% own their home. That's a retirement community, is what that is. The concern of not having children in our streets, well, that's simply because people aren't having kids like they used to. We are not Grand Rapids, which last year was named in the top 25 places to live, work, and raise a family. That's not us. We are a tourist community. We are a retirement community. I share with you these facts tonight because I, as a short-term rental owner, believe that we have become the scapegoat. We're not embracing of truly who we are. I know residents are upset. Thank you. Residents are upset that homes next to them are being purchased. But the fact of the matter is we are a retirement community that survives and thrives on tourism. The final fact, we do not want to have another situation like us taxpayers had to pay for a $500,000 lawsuit that was won by a short-term rental owner simply because there were changes in the ordinance. So in closing, I'm support of short-term rentals, and I know we're all highly invested both emotionally and financially. And thank you for your service to our community.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I wasn't going to come up and talk, but when she started talking about STRs, it got me going. The package that's going to the City Council on Monday shows what it cost us to administer short-term rentals. And during that COVID year, we lost $170-some thousand. The other 2 years, we made a total of about $60,000. So we're in a hole about $100,000 right now. So the city, the taxpayers are subsidizing STRs right now. Now, at the end of that report, there is indications of they gave out 4 citations for $750, I think, for not having licenses. Then they gave out, again, 15 warnings and then 17 emails or letters about people that either didn't have a license or were advertising as a short-term rental without a license. Now, the ordinance doesn't say anything about, warnings, okay? If they would have fined those 27 people, or 27 people, the $750 plus the other money they got for the other 2 they fined, we'd have gotten $20,000 back of the money that we're already in arrears for of $100,000. So I understand where she's coming from. I'm not against STRs, but we got to put a crunch on this thing. We got a monster that we can't control. But at the same time, we've got to enforce our ordinances. We have ordinances. This came up last week. We can enforce one ordinance for an 8-foot fence, but we can't enforce an ordinance for Overton. I mean, we got to be consistent. Okay, we've got ordinances. We do have some new people to enforce the ordinances, so we got to be consistent on everything, including STRs and collecting money all the time. No warnings. We got to have agents. If you call an agent, if the agent doesn't call the city to report it to show it's an infraction, then the person that called about the infraction to the agent or whoever it was or the owner, they have to call the city so it gets on there so we get an accurate record of what's actually going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
David Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard. I just wanted to say that some of us are very concerned about short-term rentals. That doesn't mean we are against short-term rentals. I am not at all. There are plenty of responsible STR owners and STR guests. It's a question of balance. It's a question of enforcement. I think we have some issues that we need to address. I just want to make it clear that I think we need to look at STRs and decide whether the balance that we have is good for our community or detrimental, and then proceed reasonably forward. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, we'll move on to old business. And this is a old business agenda this evening. We do not have any new business tonight. So item 6, food truck ordinance discussion. Who's taking the lead on that from staff?
I'll ask City Attorney Nick Curcio to go ahead and walk us through the staff report and the draft ordinance that are brought before you this evening.
This item has been before the Planning Commission several times, and the last meeting had a good discussion of what the Planning Commission would like to see in a possible zoning ordinance for consideration. So since the last meeting, we've made some updates to the regulatory code ordinance that has previously been brought to the Planning Commission, and also prepared some draft language for a potential zoning ordinance that could be considered at a future meeting. So probably the easiest way is to just go through the staff report, starting with the regulatory ordinance. Again, there was a base draft presented to the Planning Commission, I believe, in December, and it's come back in several packets. There have been some minor changes made since the last meeting in order to accommodate some feedback from the Planning Commission. So the first couple bullet points are kind of cosmetic type of changes. Coming to the third one, the fourth bullet point, we've eliminated the seasonal limitation on food trucks based on Planning Commission feedback and replaced it with a provision that says that permits last for a period of 1 year and can be renewed annually. We've added language into the regulatory ordinance that says that food trucks can operate on private property only as provided in the zoning ordinance. And again, we're proposing to bring a zoning ordinance to the Planning Commission for consideration. The proposal that we'll be discussing tonight is to allow them in the B2 and B4 zones on private property, which is where they're allowed under the current regulations, as well as on lots occupied by non-residential uses, which essentially means churches or schools within residential districts, as a special use. And we can get into that in more detail when we get to the zoning component. And then provide that mobile food vending operations are generally limited to the hours between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., with more restrictive hours that can be provided for public property by resolution of the City Council, or in residential zones on institutional uses by the terms of a special use permit. And then finally, the Planning Commission discussed at the last meeting the possibility of allowing food trucks for private events on residential properties for a very limited period of time. We've incorporated that provision into the regulatory ordinance, allowing them to occur, allowing residential property owners to host up to 2 events per calendar year that could have food trucks, and there would be regulations specific to those events, limiting the hours of operation and things of that nature. So that's the regulatory component. Might make sense for the Planning Commission to discuss that before we move to the zoning component, but I'll defer to you on whether you want me to continue.
I do have a couple questions on the language we have already. I'm curious, and I think I understand, Nick, but the fact that we use mobile food vending instead of food trucks, I'm assuming was a conscious choice. When you look at the different ordinances, some say food trucks, some include mobile vending. What was your thinking to include mobile vending? Mobile vending to me would include trailers that you pull, drop them off.
It does. It's a broader term. We've added, because people use the term food truck colloquially, I've added to the definition, this includes the vehicles commonly known as food trucks. So if anyone just searches the ordinance, they're going to come to the right section. But you're right, mobile food vending, it does include trailers, it does include carts, and anything that can be moved and serve food. So it's a slightly broader term, although in today's world, it's mostly food trucks.
I think at some point it will be important because, we're not talking about trailers that sell elephant ears and snow cones. We're talking about food trucks that sell meals, fully prepared meals, and I think that's an important distinction as we look at it. The other thing I'm really curious about is why we've left B3 out of consideration. I've read the ordinance twice, at least twice. And it says in our B3 waterfront that we actually encourage restaurants serving food or beverage, except those with the character of a drive-in, and I don't think we'd consider a food truck a drive-in. And if you look at the B3 district, if you look at the map, it tends to be the area we were talking about that's underserved. It's on the north side. It's where there were lots of restaurants in the past, where we had the Pancake House, where we had any number of restaurants. It also covers the area that I think we're going to see a fair amount of tourist traffic increase when the Maritime Museum gets built. The opportunity to put a food truck perhaps on that back road by the marina. That would be out of a residential area, wouldn't be a bother to a resident. And I think, of course, it's a little further on that we'll talk about when we talk about using city property, but we have concessions at North and South Beach. I think it may be appropriate to look at Packard Park and some of the beaches that are, again, away from residential areas. The last thing in that section, no, just the last thing. I thought you were very generous with the hours. Again, when I look at other ordinances, the differentiation that I see is the intent is clearly that these people serve lunch and dinner and get the heck out of there. That's why it's a truck. It's not a restaurant on wheels that stays stationary. And to me, the norm was give them enough time to prep for lunch, 10 in the morning till 8 at night, rather than 9 to 9, and competing against the brick and mortar restaurants. Those were the only questions up to this point. I have more as we move ahead.
If I can, what I would say is, the reason we didn't include the B3 at this time is because we're trying to incorporate the feedback we've gotten from the Planning Commission, kind of what we've heard as a consensus to this point. So if that's something that there's consensus amongst the rest of the Planning Commission, that's something you all would like to hear, we can definitely do that moving forward. I can tell you something staff really needs tonight is we're looking for a little bit of guidance. At the last couple meetings, we're hearing lots of productive conversation and lots of good ideas, but bluntly, some of these ideas are at different points of the spectrum on how to regulate a use like this. I think the city attorney did a really good job in including a lot of the different pieces of that, including zoning district, including some case-by-case basis with the special use on some areas, private property uses, and so on and so forth. So again, I think those are all really fair pieces of feedback. We really just need to know from the rest of the group. I mean, if this is something you're all supportive of or there's some consensus on, we're happy to make those changes.
Sure. It seemed to me, and the question came to mind because it seemed to me to address the feedback we had before. I think as a group, we're very reluctant to put a food truck in a residential area. And I get that. I think that's a good idea.
Brad,
But
could you
B3
put that
presents.
map up that we had on our last agenda packet.
I'm sorry?
I was asking Brad to put up the map.
The zoning map?
Yeah.
And if you look at the on the zoning map where B3 is, I think that's the perfect solution. It serves an underserved part of town, and I hope we get a whole bunch more people there with the Maritime Museum. I hope it just goes crazy with tourists. Captain Lou's can't serve them all. So I think there's an opportunity to fill that need. And again, remembering what a food truck is designed to do. It's not a restaurant that you park.
When you said
I agree. I think the B3 is an ideal location for food trucks. I also need to commend you for what you've got in here, but this is an area we hadn't really talked about before. Just like you noted, we haven't talked about the industrial area, but we're talking about B3, and I agree with you, Mike.
Absolutely. And I meant, Nick, you know me well enough. I meant no critique of your work. I thought it was brilliant, and it really did help me put my mind together. So.
And I appreciate the comment that you're looking for feedback. You're looking for constructive items to give you that direction. So I also think the B3 is there. And in fact, what I thought was interesting there is the gentleman who's looking at the DQ property, looking at the central business district. I've been to breweries that didn't have a kitchen, and they had in their parking lot, or they brought in once a week, a food truck. And quite frankly, if someone were to take on Dairy Queen and go forward, it's already a restaurant restaurant, if they had a mobile kitchen and it was theirs, I'm not sure what would prevent an individual like that bringing in food trucks if they were on their property, serving just their patrons somehow. I don't know, but thinking outside the box like that might be a way to look at this as well, and you hadn't been given that direction. So, but yet I don't know why Harbor Light, who allows people to bring food in, thought, hey, this summer we're going to do Food Truck Friday, and they've actually have their own parking space in the back. What would prevent someone from like that having a subcontractor come in and provide food? But there may be reasons against that,
So under current regulations, that would be allowed in the B1 and B2 only, and not in the B3.
B4.
Sorry, B2.
Central.
B2 and B4.
Okay.
Right, and not in the CBD and not in the B3.
Under current ordinance, but maybe
Right.
that's something we would want to look at. Or, our role is to come up with these ideas and then give recommendations, hopefully, and see where they go. But I'm not necessarily opposed, especially with the feedback that we've gotten so far from the CBD owners in that area. If it's appropriate, it's one thing if it's a local clothing shop wants to put something in their back versus an establishment that currently provides beer, wine, or food. It would be appropriate for them, to have a guest chef who happens to bring their own kitchen.
I assume we'll be talking more about that in depth, because that's later in your ordinance. We do address food truck parks, which we're
Right.
considering that
But
property.
in this section, we are looking at location, and CBD and B3, I think would be appropriate in this section of.
I agree with both of you, but now that being said, I don't want you to park a food truck in front of Harbor Lights and take up 4 spots in the middle of the summer. I feel like that's, there has to be some delineation. I'm all about the food trucks, you know that. And I think it's a great idea, but just we have to make sure they're not parked in front. Put them out back, and people can walk back and forth and get their meal and get their drink and sit down, and it's a great evening for everyone.
And if I can again, if
I'm
we're
just
going to
hang-
talk
hang on.
about,
Yeah, hang on a second, Grip. So I don't want you to forget the scope of what we originally were looking at, which was possibly year-long instead of a shortened season for the current zoning areas that these types of uses are allowed. And also, we were going to talk about residential. If you start expanding districts, it's going to take a lot longer than the April deadline. Okay? You need a lot more public input to do that.
I would hope the city council would consider boundaries a little bigger than just the residential and the district we talked about. I mean, when you have a solution, just to say we haven't talked about it yet, that doesn't seem reasonable to me. So, and we're not making a decision here. We are sending our advice back to city council.
There is a draft ordinance right here in the
That's correct.
agenda, and
Which
that's,
includes the food trucks.
which is kind of
I mean,
asking if you want that to go to council, so. All right, so anything else? We'll have Nick proceed.
I had the one question with regards to private event. This is something, is this different than catering? So if someone had a private event, and let's say, I've been to a beer and wine tasting on behalf of hospice, and someone brought in a caterer, and they brought in a mobile truck and served off from that truck. I mean, is that different because it's a catering versus retail on a private event?
I think what this is intended to allow is essentially catering. It's not clear that is allowed under current ordinances to the extent that falls within the definition of mobile food vendor. It's not
Okay.
necessarily permitted.
To help with the catering. And I think
Right.
that's the way to look at it, because if someone has an event and their caterer just happens to have their own kitchen and they bring it on site, and they're not doing a retail, it's for the event, we would want to help them with this ordinance. Okay, thank you.
Right, so one of the regulations in here is that it only serve to people who are at the event. It's basically a catering type situation. It would actually allow to charge individually to the people who are at the event, but the general public could not come up to the food truck when it was parked on a private lot. That takes me back to a question about some of the comments that were made earlier when planning commissioners indicated they're not interested in food trucks in residential areas. Does that include the proposal for non-residential uses within residential districts? I guess some feedback on that idea would be helpful to staff. We did at some point receive some comments from the general public indicating wanting to be able to walk from homes to food trucks. We certainly understand the concern with having them physically on residential parcels. So that the concept was to have them closer to neighborhoods without actually being in places where they're going to be adjacent to property lines of residences. So if Planning Commission could discuss their interest in that concept, that would be helpful.
Yes, that would be incredibly helpful. And I think the other piece would be, hearing that B2 and B4 are already included and there's some interest in B3, there's been some discussion about the CBD. I just encourage us not to forget about the B1 district as well. Obviously, there's not a lot of property zoned B1, but that's more of your neighborhood type businesses, and there are few properties where maybe that's a good fit.
B1 was represented on that map, right?
Should have been
Right.
B2 and 4.
Oh, 2 and 4, okay. Nick, to your point, I think you read the sentiment as I understood it too. I think we would consider locations that don't interrupt the residential character. I think there are places, for instance, I still think if we're looking along Elkenberg in that area, there are places, of course, we do have some zoning there that could be used, where A&D is, that's zoned appropriately for a business use. But I think the sentiment that I was trying to get across is I heard people don't want it by Kids Corner. I don't either. We got enough going on down there. I don't want it on North and South Beach. That's why we have concession stands. But I want it in underserved areas that are not going to impact the neighbors, disrupt the neighbors to a great degree.
Mike, you need to quantify that, though.
I
We've
know.
got to put that in an ordinance.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
And again, I think what George talked about, if I remember carefully as we went through this, is it can also be done by resolution. We can name spaces.
So that's for public property only. The ability to do that would be for public property.
All right.
So within parks, on-street parking, things like that. That's discussed later in the staff report. That's kind of difficult to do in the city with its downtown parking issues and with the fact that most of its parks are served by on-street parking as opposed to having their own parking lots. That's not to say it's impossible, but staff was unable to come up with a great recommendation of what that initial resolution might look like.
And we did take that feedback from previous meetings, and we did work with our GIS tech and our zoning staff, and we did take a look to see if there were any areas that clearly made sense that we could bring back to you all to consider recommending to City Council, and bluntly, we didn't find any for the reasons that Nick just mentioned. So, if there are specific areas that you all would find as desirable or would like to recommend to City Council, like we're talking about with some of these others, we just need some guidance because it was not clear to us that there are good locations. Around parks, it's on-street parking, and what makes that different than on-street parking in neighborhoods and on-street parking in other places? So, again, there's challenges that arise at all of these places, which is why, again, we need some guidance.
Well, and it's also going to take some time, but, the parks don't require people park on the street. There's plenty of parking at Packard Park, where you could put a food truck. People park there already. There's a Dykeman Park. I'm not suggesting Dykeman. I think that's a little too close to some residences. But I think at our beaches, there are places you could have them. Again, not talking about North and South Beach. They're already serviced with food service.
Yeah, and I think the challenges with that, again, if Packard Park is an area where there's consensus amongst the council, or excuse me, amongst the planning commission, we can take a look at that or include that in the proposal that could be considered for recommendation to city council. I think when I say there's challenges, I mean, when you think about Packard Park or some of these beach locations, you start to realize that there are vendors at some of our beaches that pay the city to operate there. Are we wanting to treat other beach locations different? Maybe the answer is yes. But again, there's complications that arise that we'd have to work through.
I certainly wouldn't suggest we give those spots away. I mean, those permits would be purchased, just as our concessionaires. Now, it's a little different situation because those are full-time concessionaires on the beach, but
And
yeah,
if we,
you're not doing this, we're not doing this as a charity. We're doing this to increase tourist traffic. We're doing this to increase revenue to the city. We're doing this as a possible incubator for people entrepreneurs who are thinking about brick and mortar restaurants. Again, it all goes back to what our intent is. Are we trying to restrict them? Or as some of the towns are doing, are actually writing ordinances to encourage them?
and we also may look at particular parks and locations in the parks, because when we attend an art fair or a craft fair at Stanley Johnson, there's quite a few food trucks, and they're actually parking on the grass. It's only a couple of days a year, and I don't think then it impacts that ground that way, but if there are some particular parks that we, by ordinance, create the location for the parking and the number of times per year, we may have limited impact on that ground. And, we may want to write into that, ordinance such that, a year or two and we decide that that's not working, or we now have enough money to maybe put a small gravel bed in one spot in a park or two, or 3 parks within the city to allow that, to serve a neighborhood.
And I think we're going to have that luxury to decide that. If you look at some of the cities around us, the food trucks in a lot of cities, they don't have a designated spot that's theirs that they leave their truck on. They have a 90-day permit, and it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's not. You're not talking 24/7 businesses here. I would encourage the staff and us to look at what Grand Rapids is doing, look at what Kalamazoo is doing. Now, Kalamazoo and Bronson Park does have food trucks that are there in the summertime 7 days a week. But Grand Rapids is by park and restricts them very much so. Matter of fact, most of their food trucks are associated with events. There are, I think, 2 designated spaces by Rosa Parks Circle, Riverside Park, and there's a couple more that are designated, but they're not, they don't pull up, plug in, I'm here for the summer. These are mobile vendors.
I've mentioned this before, Black River Park and Launch Ramp. Griffin's familiar with it. There are weekends, basically in the summer, where it's just packed all the time. Places like that, I understand that they're allowed within this ordinance, but I could see a designated spot or 2 spots there. There's a lot of kind of places where trailers can't park that are kind of dead areas in those parking lots, and especially during fishing tournaments and things like that. It might be really work there. But it's a park that if you're not a boater, you don't realize how busy that gets.
Yeah, again, I just trying to clarify what we talked about before. I was thinking that what we were talking about, and certainly my impression is, we're talking 2, 4, 6 food trucks. We're not talking an army of food trucks in town. We're going to be very selective. We're going to use them where it's to the greatest gain of the business as well as to the city. But, we're not creating with the possible exception of the CBD, which we'll talk about, that could be a 5-day-a-week operation, but, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, are you okay if Nick works through the rest of the staff report and some of the recommendations on how food trucks could be regulated on public property?
Yeah, just one more question, though. You talked about a permit for a year, and I was curious, as originally we're looking at allowing year-round operation, in B2 and B4. But I was curious why you figured the permit would be for a year rather than maybe 6-month increments or related to seasonal.
It could be different. I guess they're technically for a year as we issue them now, but they have a seasonal limitation, so you can't use them for a portion of the year. If you wanted to make a recommendation that they be for a shorter duration, that would be fine as well. One thing to remember is the permits aren't tied to any particular venue. The permits are basically saying that the truck has passed inspection from the county health inspector, it's registered with the city, and it's just licensed to operate within the city at any permitted place within the city, essentially. But I think staff is open to different terms if that's what the planning commission thinks is appropriate.
But Nick, it's my understanding we can't designate spots, no?
So
You could designate spots on public property. And how the ordinance is written, and we'll have Nick work through it here in a second, is specific approved areas could be approved by city council by resolution.
Right.
That could be as specific or as broad as city council deemed appropriate. So I guess the short answer is yes, that could be an option, but it wouldn't have to be that way.
right, and that resolution can provide a way of allocating which trucks get to come when. To the extent that's necessary, if you have a spot that's being coveted by all of food trucks, could have a kind of a rotating basis or some type of other system for allocating the spots that the city staff administers. In general, though, the concept is that the city staff would not be in the business of saying which food truck goes where. There would be permitted lots with permitted food truck accessory use, and then those owners would invite who they want and have whatever contractual relationship with those food trucks that they would want.
So another way to break this down is, when we're talking about finding appropriate locations for food trucks, first it's breaking it from public property to private property. We've talked about private property a lot, talking about different zoning districts and use and so on and so forth. When you then get to public property, you have the challenge now of, again, city council can identify as specific or broad as locations for those, and then it comes, do they want to predetermine locations, or do they want to wait until individual requests are made of them, and then essentially decide at that time to say yay or nay?
Well, and that's their work to do. There's plenty of best practices around that. I just want to make sure we're not creating a situation where we think it's just going to be, you buy a license and you go find a place to park. That's not how I envision it. If you remember the Traverse City ordinance, they set aside not private property. I agree, that's a different animal. But designating certain areas, why not? And I think, it's not like we don't have history with this. We did have food trucks at the farmers market for a while. Didn't work out too well. But we had one of the most famous food trucks. We have the woman that sold the organic stuff that was on Guy Fieri or one of the big food shows. She didn't last too long, but I can't remember her name. The one in Kalamazoo.
All right, Nick, keep going.
So I think we've touched on sections 1 and 3. We'll come down to the zoning sections. So the zoning ordinance currently doesn't address food trucks at all. The regulations that limit them to B2 and B4 are found in the regulatory ordinance, which is not a best practice. We'd recommend that there be a zoning ordinance component to whatever the city council adopts. Also, the regulations don't currently say anything about how food trucks are sited within a private property, and a lot of other ordinances do have some regulations to that effect. So we're suggesting for the B2 and B4, this first italicized paragraph within subsection 2 that essentially says have to operate on paved surfaces within a private lot in the B2 and B4, have to be set back at least 15 feet from any property line, and have to comply with the regulatory ordinance. So
Nick, can I ask what page you're on?
This is page 41 of the agenda.
Thank you.
It's the italicized paragraph about halfway down the page. So that would be the regulations for B2 and B4. It would be just kind of be added to, oh, and another limitation, as this proposal as currently written would only allow one one mobile food vendor per lot at a time. And just these general lots in the B2, B4. We'll get to a little bit later the concept of a food truck park, which would be its own use that would allow multiple food trucks, possibly up to 5 food trucks on a single lot, with the expectation that a use like that would have to provide restrooms, seating, things of that nature, as opposed to just some space within a parking lot. So the second italicized paragraph on this page, at the very bottom of page 41, it addresses the concept of food trucks as a special use on essentially church and school parking lots within residential districts. The technical term in the zoning ordinance is, I believe, non-residential use, which is a defined term in the zoning ordinance. But basically, that's in effect what it would refer to as kind of large parcels with an institutional use within a residential district. Here, we would have those same regulations, paved surfaces only 15 feet from all property lines, but also the requirement that they come into the Planning Commission for a special use permit. The idea there being that because we have residential properties, potentially single-family dwellings adjacent to the parcel as a whole, the Planning Commission could take a look at the site layout and make sure that it's appropriately situated within the site so as to not to have minimal impacts on whatever neighboring properties that there are. We didn't propose any specific kind of special use criteria. We were just envisioning that the general special use criteria, compatibility with the neighborhood type of criteria would be applied. We did do a little bit of research to see if we could find special use criteria specific to food trucks in this context, and we're unable to find anything that was a great model. So that would be the proposal there. The one thing we did think about is that typical special use approval requires an engineered site plan. That seems like overkill for a siting of a food truck. So we added language that a sketch or an annotated overhead image would suffice, just kind of showing where the food truck would go within the parking lot and showing any tables and trash cans that they would propose to put out when in operation. Another thought behind the special use concept is possibly limiting hours of operation beyond what the ordinance otherwise allows for other locations. So that's something that you could consider, especially with uses like a church use where the parking lot's going to be full on Sundays and potentially less so on other days of the week. So we're just working with applicants on coming up with something that's going to minimize impacts and be compatible with the use that's already there, is the idea behind the special use concept. Some notes on zoning about what's not addressed in this proposal, starting on page 42. As written, as we said earlier, only one food truck at a time per parcel. Don't know if there's any interest in increasing that number, but that we thought that was a good starting point for the proposal. These proposals don't impose any restrictions on how often a food truck could be on these sites. If you're interested in that, that's something that we could work into the language. Again, we anticipate that for special uses, that might be imposed as a condition, but there's no kind of base condition within the ordinance text itself limiting the frequency of how often a food truck would appear. And then finally, they're not allowed in industrial zones under this proposal just because we hadn't discussed industrial zones. Industrial zones are fairly common places for food trucks in other communities, the idea being that they can kind of serve shift workers and things like that, and there's typically large parking lots for industrial buildings. But any comments on zoning districts are welcome by staff. We've already heard B3 from several commissioners and are open to other feedback on places where they could be, and it's really not. It's pretty easy to just add districts to the extent we're adding them on. We're allowing food trucks on any parcel potentially within the district. That's an easy addition to the zoning ordinance. We can incorporate that feedback very, very easily. And And then finally, the concept of food truck parks. I did not draft any language specific to food truck parks, but I found what I thought was a very good ordinance from another community and included it in the packet as a model, just so the planning commission could see how that use would be defined and potentially regulated if interested. So I guess the question is, if you are interested in what zoning districts would be appropriate for those, I believe the property that's been discussed is in the CBD, right? So that's, if you're open to food trucks in the CBD, perhaps doing the food truck concept as opposed to just having them within individual, behind businesses might be something to think about. But staff's open to feedback on that, but didn't propose specific language for tonight's packet.
Okay. Why don't we hold questions for staff for a moment? Does anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? If so, come up, state your name, address, and you have 5 minutes.
So my name's Trevor Brooks, 429 Cherry Street. Mr. Gruber, I'm the guy that actually is looking at the Dairy Queen. And I'm interested of doing an investment that goes kind of beyond just, buying a business and trying to keep it going. And when I was looking at the Dairy Queen, I was thinking, like, man, this huge parking lot is basically a waste of space for this because I've been here in the summers. You can't pull the cars on the street. It's just not a very efficient piece of property for a parking lot. I'm a Canadian, but I've lived in Texas for most of the time I've been in the United States. And in Texas, food trucks and food truck parks are, part of the culture. And one of the things that I do understand, and Mr. Neese was talking about, underserved. The reality here in this little town is this downtown district is underserved when it comes to food, especially in the summer. Numerous times we've had to make decisions as families, like, well, we have to leave. We can't. The restaurants are backed up for 3 hours and stuff. So the reality is, a food trucks in this district, not only do they have a huge opportunity of relieving some of the stress and the user experience of this town, is just a positive outlook. So that's while I'm looking at this Dairy Queen, part of it relies on what's going to happen here. But the Dairy Queen as itself is not a business that makes sense from an investment perspective unless you can do something bigger than this. But I want to take that kind of step further. The Dairy Queen has two buildings associated with the package, and we're talking about. I plan on increasing the number of bathrooms. I plan on the second building, the 2-story building that's next door. The bottom part of the building, I plan on building a commissary kitchen, because you can't, again, especially in the downtown district, that's going to be a huge draw. There's going to be a lot of people here, and a food truck is simply not designed to support, a 10 to 10 or whatever the time is. So I plan on building a commissary kitchen to support the trucks down here. This commissary kitchen is going to be big enough. I've already been talking with the MSU that the commissary kitchen can be big enough that I can potentially do like an incubator. I've already talked about the idea is like, hey, what if I owned 2 of the trucks and I did some kind of incubation and got people to come in and pitch their food and test it, and if it works, you can have one of my trucks. All this kind of stuff. I'm really looking at this not so much as like, ooh, there's an opportunity here to make a bunch of money. I'm interested in investing in this little town. And this particular piece of property is incredibly unique, just because of its location and the size of that parking lot, et cetera. So I think a food truck park would be perfect. According to my numbers, I'm thinking it could support 5, maybe 6 trucks. I actually sent rendering that you guys might have seen yet, or hopefully Griffin was going to share it with you guys. But the potential is pretty exciting, I think. And the bottom line is it's not competition. I don't plan on, for example, there won't be a truck that serves sandwiches because there's a sandwich guy next door. I'm looking for trucks that we don't have in this community, like Greek food or, Thai fusion, those kinds of, so bring additional types of food opportunities into the town. And, just ultimately, I think it'll be a huge, valuable element. And I'm excited to be part of it. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I was just listening to the ordinance about non-residential church in the residential area, and you've already got the ordinance that says you got to have your trailer or truck or food thing, whatever, 15 feet away from the street or property and stuff. But then you say you have to go to planning commission to get approval. I mean, it seems kind of ridiculous to have all this stuff. You've got a permit to have a food truck, put it there, okay? And if there's a problem with it, somebody's going to say something about it. But to having to go to planning commission to get approval to put your food truck on your property seems kind of a little excessive. That's all. Thank you.
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. With regard to the definition of residential property, it has a parcel or condominium, and when you're limiting the number of food trucks for that event, if it's in a common area, is there going to be problems with whether it's been there or not? Will you hit your limit? Is that clear enough? And I'm not so sure it's consistent with other definitions like in the short-term rental, just so that the definitions within the ordinance and the codes would be consistent throughout. I'm glad to see increased discussion about other locations. I'm disappointed that discussion doesn't include some type of alternative for someone who wants it in a residential area where the neighbors all support it. We all talk about underserved areas, especially the south side of town. And if there's you could set it up so there's a percent number of neighbors within a specific area, diameter area. If all of them approve, then that seems like you could do a waiver to allow it in a residential district, as long as everything else is set. The 15-foot setback, I was just curious the basis of that, because depending on how big the area is, that may actually constrain access to it if you have to have a 15-foot setback from the property line, because the driveways can go right up to the property line. So that just, I would like to better understand the choice of 15 feet. With regard to the parks, I know that we have events, and so how will that mesh with the events that we have? Because there was some language, and I was trying to go paperless, and now I'm, that the grant of it means that you would not, you would comply with every other regulation. So if the food truck park only limits 5, but we have more than 5 at Stanley Park for special events, there seems to be some inconsistencies. And so just making sure that that's covered so that it doesn't negatively impact things that we already have going for food trucks. Regarding locations, especially for the number of food trucks, so if this is an explosion and we do get a lot of people coming and trying to do this, and there could be preference areas, then that hasn't been addressed, and I'm glad that that was mentioned, and hopefully that will be resolved in the next version. But again, I think I just can't stress enough, because I think this all started because of the outpour of support for the Fruit Kitchen food truck, and the neighbors were extremely positive about it. They complimented the accessibility and the lack of impact on the neighborhood. And so there has been talk about not wanting it in your neighborhood, but there's been a lot of talk about wanting it in the neighborhood, especially where they're underserved for such opportunities for dining out and ease access for parents. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Diane Carlson, excuse me, 74 South Haven Street. I just want to make a comment about the, somebody else did too, about the start time at 7 a.m. That's pretty early if you're in a residential area, so I'm just throwing that out there. Someone also said something about do not interrupt the residential character. And from my seat, that's what we would be doing. We live in a residential area. A few years ago, we had motorhomes all around Kids Corner Park. It was terrible. It was people past the park being closed, and they were using that instead of going to a motorhome park. So we had that taken care of. So I feel like the having food truck vendors would be interrupting the residential area in some ways similar to short-term rentals, although I am in favor of short-term rentals, but they do impact us too. Space, we don't have enough parking around here. Everybody knows that when it's busy in the summertime, you can't find a parking place, especially around Kids Corner. People feel that they can use my driveway to park because that's available. I would think that vendor trucks would take up some extra space from that, but I'm worried more about the noise. You have generators that are running these trucks. And technically, if you're parked in front of the park, in front of my house, that's 20 feet from my front porch, and I'm going to be smelling whatever kind of food you want to think about. I'm going to be smelling that smoke from 7 a.m. until 8 o'clock at night, and that does not appeal to me. So that bothers me as well. Again, with the traffic and the kids and everybody who's trying to ride their bikes and play on the playground. I don't know if putting a truck on that park anywhere would not interfere with the baseball diamonds and all the kickball games that are going on and the kids playing Frisbee and things like that. So my plea would be to please think about the residents, the long-term residents that are there that will be getting impacted by this. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Monique Crowley. I live at 320 Fruit Street, and I also own Fruit Street Kitchen. One thing that I haven't really heard, and I think one of the community members mentioned it, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate, I do think it's really important that this new ordinance has a provision for entrepreneurs to potentially propose locations. It's very important for the entrepreneurs. I mean, I know that by the book, we can put up maps all day, but entrepreneurs kind of know where their customers are at. They kind of know what community caters to their cuisine. And right now, I actually have a permit application that's been on file with the city since October. It's just dead. It's just sitting there. It hasn't been denied. It hasn't been approved. It's not even being processed because we don't have a process for entrepreneurs to propose locations. So it's just sitting there. Not to mention, I know everybody's talking about this April 1st deadline. April 1st is actually the day that vendors should be able to open. It's not the day that we should be told we can. I mean, we've got to have time to get our menus together, get our customers to know where we're going to be at. It takes a lot of preparation to get that mobile operation going. It's not something you can tell us March 30th, you're good to go in 48 hours. It just doesn't really work like that. And another thing, too, that I heard just briefly mentioned, but not really elaborated on, is the fact that Fruit Street Kitchen did operate in a residential location last season. There were no issues. That was, I guess, like you could say, a mock run. We are licensed by the health department. We've jumped through all the hoops, all the hurdles, everything that there is, and the residents in my neighborhood are all for it. I haven't been given any opportunity to even present the offer. I haven't even been given an opportunity to be told no. It's just sitting there. And I mean, we just can't keep waiting. Entrepreneurs, my husband, our family has already missed an entire season because we were not allowed to operate because of the vending ordinance. The vending season stops. Okay, fine. We've patiently waited since October. Now April's right around the corner and we're still not really sure. And another thing I wanted to kind of talk about, somebody said that food trucks aren't mobile restaurants, but I kind of beg to differ. They are. They are mobile restaurants, and we do build clientele. We do have regular customers. We do have people that actually want our cuisine, look forward to regular hours, want to know where they can find us, when we're going to be open, memorize our menu, just like McDonald's #1 is a Big Mac. People know what food Fruit Street Kitchen offers. If you put entrepreneurs in a position where they're hopping from place to place, sometimes they're on North Shore Drive, sometimes they're on this district, sometimes they're on this block. Well, we could only stay over here for 3 days, and then we had to move over here for 2 days. Our customers don't know where we are. They don't know where we are. So we cannot start building our clientele every time we move. It's not really fair to the entrepreneurs. We put in a lot of effort, marketing and advertising and drumming up that business. I've kind of got to start over now in March because we lost our customers, all winter. My husband and I actually purchased a brick and mortar in Lawrence because we were not allowed to operate our food truck here in South Haven. And we couldn't afford the commercial spaces here. I'm just being honest. Our budget didn't allow for it. So we went to Lawrence. Lawrence has a downtown business development authority that actually offers compensation to help reimburse business owners for their monthly leases on the commercial spaces. They've got fake aid programs that will help reimburse for, sprucing up the outside of your building. They are begging people to come. It's the complete opposite of the way we were treated here in South Haven. And I'm not saying it meant to come across like that, but like I said, we've got a complete permit application that's been on file since October. It hasn't even been denied. It's just sitting there because nobody knows what to do with it. Also, in regards to residential locations, nobody's talked about people asking to operate on their residence. We're not asking to park in front of somebody else's house, around the corner, down the block. My residence is my private property. So I think there needs to be some sort of language in there, too, that allows for, if nothing else, a special use permit or something. I've looked all through the ordinances. I was trying to find something I could fill out to give you guys to at least, to process, at least get the ball kind of rolling. There's nothing. There's nothing. So that brings us here, but I feel as though we're still somewhat at a standstill because April 1st is right around the corner. We still don't know if we're going to be able to open or not. If so, where? I mean, we've got customers that are just in limbo that have been waiting for us since October, and we're anxious to serve them great food. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Commissioner, one more. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak after this gentleman?
Jim Sankowski, Bundy's Bakery Cafe, 89 North Shore Drive. I've been over on the north side probably since 1979 when my parents took a dilapidated restaurant. We had 2.5 acres over there and rehabbed it and ran it for 10 years. And it wasn't financial reasons we left. It was because of what the city was doing to the north side. We weren't in the DDA. We weren't in the central business district. And we weren't in any rehab district. And that's what Bundy's is now. Not in a rehab district, not in the CB, Central Business District, and not in the Downtown Development Authority. I'd like to try and expand the business. I can't expand the business. But getting to putting in competition on Park and putting on competition at Packard Park, I have customers that walk all the way from Baseline Road or take golf carts. If they stop in Packard Park to buy a coffee, and I know how, since I've been over there for 40 years, I know how much it takes to keep a business running on the north side year-round, which I can't keep it because the business disappears over there. So I know those 3.5, 4 months, that's when you have to make it. And I'm the only one, myself and Jamie. Jamie, you can look across to Packard Park, and if you put sandwich trucks over there, they're going to stop. Instead of walking to Jamie's and going to get one of her sandwiches, they're going to maybe stop at a truck. And they're going to take that truck and take that money and leave town. Because I don't know how many trucks are from South Haven. So my big concern is every truck you put on the north side takes away from Jamie's business and my business. And I tell you, the events in the Stanley Johnston Park, which bring boatloads of people to the north side, does not improve my business at all. They should be the busiest days of the year for me, and they're not, because of the food trucks, because of the vendors that the city allows park in the parks. And it's just one of those things where I've learned from being in business over at Bundy's since 1995 that it just gets so crowded and people go to those food trucks. And I'm just saying, if you want to keep business on the north side, which now there's only 2 of us. When in 1979, you had Mariners Inn, you had Channel One, you had Earl at Pancake House, you had, and you even had the Lions Den down the street, and then you had us, and you had Northside Memories, which was something else beside then, and it's all disappeared. And I don't think, as far as I'm concerned, is that I know that what it takes to be in business and any other business over there, because you put them in the park, they got all the parking they want. I can't have so many chairs because I don't have so many parking spots because I'm not in the DDA or the Central Business District. They got all the trash over there. I got to pay extra for my trash. I've got to pay extra for everything. I love being in business. I came back from school to be in business in South Haven. And you put more competition over there. I mean, Captain Lou's can't handle it all. Well, Jamie sure could handle some more business if that once the Maritime Museum opens up. And it's not that much further of a walk. And I'm just here to protect what's left of the businesses on the north side that serve food to the local and vacationers. Thank you. God bless America.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing nobody, Commissioner, questions, comments for going forward here?
So I had a couple comments. So one, I appreciate the simplification of the ordinance. I think that was good. I like the special use in the residential districts. I do like the idea of food truck parks. Obviously, we'll have to make sure that is done properly, like the wording in the packet on that. I do think that, talking about other areas, I think industrial areas would definitely be something I would like to see. I think a lot of times, especially light industrial, they may want to have a food truck just to help keep their, have the ability for their workers to have something, something to eat other than something that they might bring. I think that was all I had. Thank you.
So I agree. I really like the idea of the food truck parks, too. I would hope, though, that some preference would be given to local vendors. I appreciate great Thai food, don't get me wrong, but I do appreciate the Fruit Street Kitchen, too. So, and I would just like to make sure that, which, by the way, I taught your son. I have a good picture I'll show you after. I taught him hospitality back in the day, so I know that they are Serve Safe certified, and they are very safe, and their food is delicious. So I just think that we need to make sure that we give local people some props and give them a chance to participate in some of this.
Yeah, I listened carefully to everybody's questions. Most of my concerns are handled, but I understand also that changing it at this point is, there's too many unknowns. The hours, I think, are a little bit long. Districts, you answered my questions. Fruit Street Kitchen lady asked who could request a location. For instance, if somebody wanted to put a truck in Black River Park, how does that, I didn't, since you brought that up, I wondered, how does that happen?
So I think even as things currently stand, but certainly under the new proposed ordinance, the city council has the ability to set locations on public property by resolution. So there could be a process where an applicant would come to the city council and request a specific portion on public property. As Griffin was kind of explaining earlier, the public property could work in two ways. Like the city council could pass kind of an omnibus resolution that has a map attached to it and shows specifically which spots, or it could do it on an application-based basis. This ordinance doesn't really specify one way or the other which way the city council has to do it. So that would be up to them whether they would entertain individual requests for public property. So for private property, that concept doesn't really work. It has to be appropriately zoned. And you can't defer zoning decisions to public sentiment. There's cases that say you can't, like, condition a special use permit on the neighbors all voting in favor of the use or things like that. The city council, that restraint wouldn't apply to the city council for public property. City council could take into account input from neighbors on it if someone were to apply on an individual application. So I hope that answers your question. That's a little bit complicated, but it's.
And I'm just down to, I think, adding industrial is a good addition. There's probably quite a few businesses that could have Friday food truck and, put out a proposal to different people to come on Friday and be at their light industrial spot, a vibroacoustic, kind of thing. And then I do like the idea of investigating areas in the central business district where it fits, i.e. the brewery in their own parking space in the back of their business. They're already serving alcohol. So I think there may be some limited spots if a business meets certain criteria in the central business district and has the ability for off-street public parking to allow a spot like that. Certainly that's something that could be deleted later if someone decided, we don't want to see that, but I don't have a problem with that. The DQ is the same type of operation. That's his property, I think, is off-street parking in his own parking lot. If he decided that was the type of food and a business he could run, that I don't have a problem with that. Same way with New Holland Brewery, if they had those spots in the back behind there that were private, owned by their landlord, and that was permissible. We're not in the public, but we're also in the central business district, and they currently serve, alcohol or food, and want to expand on that for limited. I'd like to see that in the ordinance.
Yeah, I'll jump in much the same sentiments. The one thing we haven't talked about, I think the private property thing's going to be a real big hurdle. And I got to be honest with you, if we don't resolve that, it wouldn't bother me terribly. I mean, again, I'm not looking to open up a food truck industry in town. I'm looking for an opportunity for some startups, there's a bigger vision involved here too. A little diversity of food in this town. We say we're a diverse community. If you look at food trucks, that's primarily their business. They're serving street food. They're serving international food. They're serving food that serves different cultures than what we're used to here. To the point on the neighborhoods, I don't think you'd have to restrict that. I mean, I think you could still do it. I mentioned to this group before, the city of Wixom has an ordinance that allows neighborhoods to set aside parking spots for neighborhood parties, for block parties. And they bring food trucks in. Now, it's not every weekend. It's like once a month, whatever, to build community. So I'll go back to what I said earlier. I mean, it depends how you look at this thing. Are we trying to restrict food trucks, or are we trying to find a way to grow another part of our businesses here with a business that is far more accessible to the entrepreneurs that were raised in this town than a brick-and-mortar restaurant or the other business opportunities available? So I hope. I got to say, I'm sentiment. I hear Jim, and I think people know that. We've been close to that family for years, and I get that. I'm just not sure it would hurt Jim that terribly much, but we do need to listen to that, and we do need to probably consider some distancing to make sure we're close to brick and mortar restaurants. But I would encourage the commissioners, and I encourage, once again, just a simple thing for the council. Please go on these websites and look how the other cities are doing it. Every day there's a schedule in Grand Rapids, which food truck is going to be where. There are 3 locations: Calder Park, Rosa Park Circle, and Riverside Park. Here's the lineup for the day. I mean, and if you look at some of the food trucks that are currently there, El Caribe, a Caribbean offering. Patty Matters, which, by the way, won the national award for best food truck hamburger in the States last year. That's pretty cool. And then one that probably touches a lot of people around here, a food truck called Touch It Dutch, serving Dutch food. So, I mean, it brings us a chance to bring in things that we don't have here that can attract a different section of tourism. I'm excited about, I hope we can do something about the food truck park. Right? That's going to be a heavy lift, I'm sure, but man, that's a great idea. When I saw that rendering, I thought, yep, that makes a lot of sense. It's not close to anybody, you know, and it's also part of town. There's no restaurants there. You get your muffler changed, but you can't get a sandwich.
Listening to the comments through the months that this was on our agenda, and also listening to comments today, I think the sentiment of the commissioners is, yes, we do want to proceed with this, and we want to have the right procedures, the right processes, make sure that our ordinances are clear, simple, easy to understand, and I certainly appreciate what I received today as a first attempt to that. And I think the industrial park is a good thing to look at as well. And regarding going into neighborhoods, I think if there is a process that's not cumbersome, where we hear residents saying that that's indeed what they want, but there has to be some parameters around how the neighbors respond to that. And I don't know if we have, that probably can come through more discussion and investigation. So, yes, I think we're enthusiastic, and I think you started us down the right path to move forward with this, and now we just have to look at some of those smaller particulars of it. So, thank you for your work.
I agree with adding the B3. I also agree with adding industrial districts. If we're looking at limiting the days of the week that they're available, the industrial district should be 6 days a week, because there are people there working those 6 days. They're not just the tourists that are here Thursday through Monday. With regard to your comment about one food truck at a time, I think that's a little limiting. Michael was just going through all the varieties of food trucks. Some of those, if they were parked in the area that I was walking to, I might not want to participate in. I'm not Dutch. Or whatever. And so a variety at that location, if the location is large enough. Now, if I was the owner of a piece of property and having to sign off on a food truck there, and I only had a small parcel, I wouldn't even allow more than one. Let the economy determine, let the owners determine how many. But we need to put a maximum on it, of course. And maybe 2 is the maximum, maybe 3 is the maximum. But I think 1 is a little limiting. We could take advantage of some larger sites. I also had a couple of questions on your red marked up ordinance, if you'd care to look at those right now. I'm looking at page 47 of the packet. Item number 5. There's a 5-foot dimension there. Is that intended to be 15?
That one was intended to be 5, given that residential parcels are smaller. It's only going to be 2 days a year. This is for the private parties.
Okay.
Yes, that 5 was intentional.
Okay. And then the second part of that sentence, and shall be oriented such that the food vending window does not face toward adjacent boundary lines. On a small parcel, any direction you look, there's a boundary line pretty close there. What were you trying to get to?
Shouldn't be facing the ones that are 5 feet. Like it should be facing towards the center of the parcel as opposed to facing towards the street.
Okay.
I could probably say that a little bit better.
Yeah, okay. It wasn't clear to me, so if you can work on that and clear
I
it
think
up.
the intent there was to try to centralize the activity surrounding that food truck in the middle or as close to the middle as the parcel containing the food truck as possible, as opposed to pushing it off to potentially neighboring parcels.
Right, and especially a party retained, which can't set the party
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure that 2 times in a year is enough at some locations. If you're looking at a school or a church parking lot, we might want to allow more than that. Or am I applying your 2 days to the wrong place?
Yeah, 2 days is in the wrong place.
Okay.
2 days is only for having food truck at your house for a private party.
Okay.
We'll do that
All right.
for the year. And there would be a special license, not license, but a special permit you'd have to get specific to that event each time you were to do it, so the city had to keep track of those. Apologize. But the the institutional use concept currently has no limitation on days other than what might be imposed by the planning commission as part of a special use permit. So not to conflict with the church use or the school use or something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Am I wrong, or don't we already have some ordinances that manage food vendors on private property? I'm thinking about all the charities that bring caterers and have the smokers at their place, and
I don't know that we do. What we do have is the ability to have vendors in conjunction with community events. So there's a community event process. They go to before the city council an application form, and it specifies where the vendors are going to be. I don't know that there's anything outside of that. Do you know of anything?
Not off the top of my head.
yeah, I'll give you a specific, the big L van thing we do once a year, right at the corner of Monroe Boulevard and what is that, Erie?
Does that not receive a special event?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
City?
Are there not already?
Yes, there's a process
ordinances
for
in
that.
place? Yes.
And that's written into the ordinance. So food trucks would be allowed anywhere as provided by a community event permit. So that's kind of an exception to all the rules we're talking about. But those are approved by
That was
council
my
on
understanding. That's good.
Does that relate to, like the garage sale, where you can do 2 of those a year? Is that right?
Well, you can do as many as you want till someone tells you.
No, it's written in the ordinance.
I know.
But is that similar to what you're talking about?
I think so.
Okay. Well, so after hearing everybody, I mean, I came here tonight prepared to vote on approving the 365 days of operation in B2 and B3, and maybe can add the language about private parties. But this is spiraled into something entirely different. You're adding districts, and I have reservations on some of the language in this ordinance. When we're talking special use, is the resolution that's generic, or do you tie it to special event resolution? Because I could see it being misused as almost a spot zoning. So in order for me to move forward on a lot of things maybe you guys are pro on, I'm not convinced yet. So I guess if we're coming back again and we're not moving forward for setting a public hearing, what I'm going to need to see, if we're talking additional districts, you're going to have some more maps so we can overlay and get into all those discussions and look at it just like anything else. And this is going to take, I predict, quite a while. So that doesn't help people who want the 365 days in the B2 and B3 at least. So we're going to be in a holding pattern apparently. So with that, do you need any other input from this commission?
Sounds like we're probably premature to schedule a public hearing unless someone wants to make a motion to do that. I think what we will do is incorporate all the feedback we've received into a draft ordinance so that the planning commission could then excise parts that don't have a majority. Because we've kind of gotten various concepts by individual commissioners and not exactly sure what we have a majority for. But I think we have enough that we can put together a draft of the zoning ordinance. It would include B3, industrial, food trucks in the CBD. It would include some type of allowance for food trucks in the CBD outside of existing restaurants and bars, possibly by special use. Is that essentially your concept?
Yeah, it was just ancillary use of places that are already a restaurant
Serving.
or a bar.
Service type businesses, okay.
So we've gotten a lot of good feedback. I think what I heard tonight is I think the base ordinance that we have put together is workable. We just need to make some adjustments based on the feedback tonight, and yes, we can bring back lots of maps.
One concept for the planning commission to consider if you're concerned about timeline, the base ordinance could actually move forward as is, with the caveat that we don't have the zoning provision spelled out yet. So we could say as allowed by the zoning ordinance. If you wanted to send it separate, if you want to send it all as a package, then we've obviously got to take more time.
I recommend no.
Not yet.
Well, yeah, again, this is new to us, and we're discovering it. I see that approach as a possible pilot. Let's see how it goes within the existing ordinances that we have right now. Maybe it is too early to talk about expanding it into other districts. I don't know, but I'm sure want it to be looked at, considered. So, I'm probably different from the other commissioners sitting here, but I'm not concerned about time. I think we get in trouble a lot in this city by doing something that's simple and quick, and then we end up paying the price much later on. I think this it's okay to take a little time and work through. This is a complex issue. It's not an easy issue.
Well, I'll reiterate, I think it'd be simple. You could get the operation of 365 days a year for the current area done immediately, and then we can work on the complexities of all these different things that have come up.
How is that different than what Nick just offered?
He's saying use this entire draft ordinance. I'm saying not. I'm saying just the allowing the 365, but.
Tim, I would certainly listen to an ordinance that gets us started, as long as we're not shutting down the possibility of looking, I would like to see a robust investigation. I think we're missing a tremendous opportunity in this town to take care of our tourists, help our restaurants out.
Well, and I think one of the big discussions we really haven't had yet, but it relates to short-term rentals. And we've heard time and again, we don't want businesses in our residential district, but yet on the other hand, apparently we want mobile food truck businesses in our residential district. So I'm saying that's a discussion that's probably going to come up, and we'll have to have public hearings and.
I'm certain we will. I'm not hearing anybody on this commission saying they want food trucks in residential neighborhoods. I'm not hearing that. Maybe you are. But Tim, I'm sorry, but I think that's an excellent example. When we make a quick decision, and sometimes it comes back to bite us. Yeah, people don't want short-term businesses in their neighborhoods. But if we're going to have short-term businesses, what's wrong with Monique selling food off her porch? Just a residential use of her property. So, I mean, it's not that simple.
Well, yeah, it is, because that's what I'm saying. There's the argument is somebody that has a home that wants a short-term rent, it's their property. Why not? Then you can say, why not sell food off your porch?
Why not?
Right? So it's interesting discussion.
Yeah, it's a good discussion.
Doesn't the current ordinance that's on the books right now, doesn't the food truck option open up on April 1st? Is that?
First, right?
That's correct. So the seasonal, they're from that perspective, there isn't really a hurry on the seasonal provision because it's about to open next month anyway.
Okay.
And my guess is you're not going to see a line at City Hall waiting on April 1st to get a permit. It's not going to happen that way.
All right, so we're going for the long haul on this one. And I guess get some maps. We'll figure out if we're going to add additional zoning districts, and then if we're going to start spot zoning in the public parking areas and such.
We'll do what
It's
we
not
can for
zoning.
the next meeting.
It's permitting. We're
Permitting,
spot
I
permitting.
don't see any difference in it in this case. All right, good, let's move forward. Item 7 is the report for short-term rentals.
City staff worked through this report with the Planning Commission at the February meeting. At that time, it was asked, because of the busyness of that meeting, that it be brought back and the Planning Commission be given time to discuss as necessary, I suppose. So again, unless you all would prefer, I don't intend to work through the report again. It's the same documents as the previous meeting, as are required annually by the short-term rental ordinance.
Okay.
They
So
were brought
that's
before.
good.
I'm sorry.
That's good. All right, everybody's had a chance to review it. Do you have any questions about what's in this report?
I think the report met the requirements. Nice piece of work. That's what we're asked to do, is just receive it. Receive it as fact, receive it as well-researched, and
That's correct.
I'm happy
Thank you.
with it. I do have one question in terms of what we included and what we did not. Is it beyond, I mean, I would like to make a request that we also update the spreadsheet that lists the addresses and owners of the property that we currently have. It was attached in the original 2016. And it is available from the city now, but you have to ask for it, and it just needs to be updated so that it's accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No
I'll
questions?
just make a mention that
Yeah.
on Monday's city council meeting, there's going to be also a discussion of short-term rental report, which includes more of the financial side of short-term rentals.
Good to know. Okay. Anybody else on commission right now? No? All right, anybody from the audience wish to speak about this short-term rental snapshot report? Okay, seeing none. Any further discussion on this before we take a motion to adjourn? No? All right, so staff member comments, and then we'll go to commissioner comments if there are any.
It says no action is needed aside from a motion to accept. Do we need a motion to accept?
Do we?
Please, if you all don't mind.
Oh,
I'll-
okay.
I'll
That's
make
been
a
the
motion
practice
to
in the
accept the
past.
2022 short-term rental snapshot reports.
Support.
It's been moved and supported to accept the report. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Okay, now we'll go to staff comments.
I only, again, would like to highlight that we will have a new zoning administrator starting here in the next week. We're very excited to have Kelly joining the team. Appreciate everyone's continued patience as we go through some staffing transitions. We will be at full staff after that. Need a little bit of time to get everyone up to speed, but I'm very, very excited about the team we've brought on board here in the last couple months. With that being said, I would like to give some special recognition to both, well, to all three, to Brad, Luke, and Nick here this evening. All three of them have really gone above and beyond over the last couple months to pick up the slack in the building department. I know Luke's still really new to the team, but Brad and Nick have been with the city for several years, and their help is invaluable. So I just want to give them some recognition, because I know we couldn't do what we do, and preparing these reports and going through the amount of information we do without them. So thank you.
Okay. Nick, Brad, Luke, anything? No? All right, Larry.
Just thanks to staff for some good work again on a tough project here with this truck ordinance. I'm not sure that we've got our hands around it yet, but I think you guys are doing very well.
Janice?
Yes, I hope some of you, the members, have seen that the Michigan Sea Grant Coastal Zoning and Planning Group have an online course. I've been participating in that course, and there's a lot of great resources, so I just wanted to mention that. And also, I did notice or heard on NPR Stateside on February the 25th where they were talking about the revetments at Chimkaming, and they are now recommending geotubes rather than rock revetments there. So there are things happening along the coastline regarding the erosion. And thanks, staff.
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Just my thanks again. I can't tell you how invaluable it is to have the staff work that's done. I do help Griff. I know that these are hard times for all of us, but I would suggest to you that we make sure we have plenty of staff. If anything, I think this year's going to be very busy. So having overstaff is better than having understaff at this point. But thank you, Nick. That was good work.
Not a ton to add, but thanks, Brad, for your patience. I swear I don't dodge your calls. You just always call when I'm on the phone, so.
I want to thank everybody. Thank you for the comments. I want to recognize this group, Neighborhoods Need Neighbors. They were in mass at the last city council meeting and made a lot of comments that opened my eyes. I went to their website and read, and it's something that's coming back to this room, again, both here and city council. One of the things that I read was a comparison of South Haven to pretty much everybody else. If you look at all up and down the coastline, everybody's over here, and we're doing something completely different way over here. If we cut the number of permits that we have in half, we would still have more permits than any other town in Michigan per capita. And so when the folks say, well, I don't understand your concern, there's a real concern. We're doing something very different from everybody else, and there's pushback. The fellow that's going around town handing these out knocks on people's doors, and he's got 130 or 40 of them out there, and he's had 3 or 4 people that have said no. I mean, 90% of the voters are looking at their agenda and saying, yeah, this is what we want. Something, I encourage you to go to Michigan Municipal League. Their number one priority this year is helping small towns like us understand the impact of short-term rentals on neighborhoods. That's all.
And I also appreciate all the work that Brad and Nick have been doing when we haven't had a zoning individual. And I can't wait to have Kelly Doucette here joining us.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Been moved and supported to adjourn. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.